Okay, so you're good to go, Russ. You're live now. Okay, Russ, so you're live now. You're good to go.
Okay.
Uh,
Thanks, Harry. So you make me host again, and I'll start the record button, even though there's nobody else here. I'll pause the recording while we're waiting for people to come.
yep, right. Okay, so have a good day. I'll be leaving you.
Thanks, Harry. You
The
have a good day
class.
too.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Get set up. I'm going to go to here. Oops. Well, good evening to everyone who's on live stream. We're about to start a class called 6 Questions Every Author Should Ask Before They Publish a Book. And I hope if you're live streaming tonight that you also join Get Set Up, register for a class like this, and then you can participate. So if you happen to be catching this class tonight, make sure you do that. Good evening, Diane and Lily. Welcome. Well, I've got Diane and not Lily. I lost Lily. Hi, Diane.
Hello, Russ. I like your home.
Thank you.
You play guitar, I see.
I do play guitar, and I love
you have
that
a lot
guitar.
of books.
Well, I ought to.
Mm-hmm.
I am a writer and a former book publisher. I can't stop buying them. There's also, you can't see it, but there's a pile over here in the floor. The bookcase over there you can't see, and one over here you can't see. And then there's a pile on the floor that's growing. And I'm contemplating this afternoon how I can build a small bookshelf there. I not only like to collect books for what's in them and to read them, I also collect books because I write, and I use books as background material as a writer. So one of my sayings is, you can't write if you don't read.
Uh-huh.
And I have read people who have tried to write books who I know don't read. So Where are you from, Diane?
New Jersey, Southern New Jersey.
Southern New Jersey. Very good. Well, how far south?
Millville. Home of Mike
Millville.
Trout. Home of Mike Trout.
Okay. I'm ignorant. Who is Mike Trout?
Mike Trout is a famous baseball player.
Oh, okay. Hi, Kim.
Los
How are you?
Angeles Angels.
Oh, okay. When did he play baseball?
He's still playing.
He's as of now. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Probably not just this minute. Well, he might be in spring training.
Yeah, that's true. He still lives here too. He still lives in Millville.
Very good. I have two connections to New Jersey. We'll make a little small talk while we wait for anyone else to join who might be joining.
Okay.
And one connection is I was born there, but that hardly counts because we moved when I was 6 months old. So I have no memory of it. And I went back to my birthplace finally after.
Where was it?
Dover, New Jersey, which is in northern New Jersey.
Way up north.
60 miles due west of Manhattan. And I went there for the first and only time when I was probably about 55, and I almost got arrested by the military police, but that's a long story. I didn't do anything wrong that I knew I was doing. I just took a picture of a base where it said no photography.
Oh boy.
My other connection with New Jersey is that for about 5 years running, my wife's extended family vacationed at Ocean City.
Okay.
That's getting farther south, but I believe that you said Millville, that's farther south.
That's a little farther south, but Ocean City's not that far away from here, maybe 35 minutes.
Okay. It was very nice. And Kim is our Get Set Up TA support. Where are you from, Kim?
Hello, I'm actually from the Philippines.
Oh.
Okay. And are you in the Philippines today?
Yes, I am. It's 5 a.m. here.
Ooh, so
5
you're
in the morning.
Do you like to drink coffee?
I do.
Okay, well, I hope you've got a cup.
Wow. Yes, I do.
Very good. It's did you say 5:30? Okay, so you're exactly on the other side of the world from me. All right. I get it.
I think it's 3 p.m. in your time.
5:30. Nope. 5:30 p.m. I'm on the East Coast, and I'll explain more about that. Hi, Lily. Where are you calling from today?
Hey, I'm from New York. That's where I'm calling in from.
Okay, like as in New York City.
Correct. Yes.
Where?
Manhattan, the West 60s. Are you familiar with that, Russ?
I've been there several times. My daughter lives in Brooklyn.
Oh, okay.
We've been there. That's near where Central Park starts, the southern end, right?
Right, where Central Park starts on one side, on the other side, sort of the Lincoln Center area. Are you familiar with that? Yeah. Okay, so that's sort of that. If you've been there, around that neighborhood. And where are you?
I'm from Harrisonburg, Virginia.
Oh, okay.
And Harrisonburg is in the lovely Shenandoah Valley of Western Virginia. We are an hour west of Charlottesville, 2 hours southwest of Washington, D.C., 2 hours due west of Richmond. And the Shenandoah Valley is nestled between the Blue Ridge Mountains to the east and the Allegheny Mountains to the west. And I've lived here for 10 years. And I have no plans to live anywhere else. So I really love it here.
May I ask where you were before the 10 years?
Before that, I was in Western Pennsylvania, and I have lived in Western Pennsylvania off and on for 30 some years. Not the longest continuous time was 13 years. And but a 13-year stretch, an 8-year stretch, and a 10-year stretch. So you add all those up and you get 31 years in 4 different
Uh-huh.
places, all Western Pennsylvania. And if you know
Uh-huh.
Pennsylvania is really 2 distinct states divided by the mountains. The east side, which is the Susquehanna Valley and over to the Delaware River Valley, is one state, and the mountains in the western Pennsylvania and Pittsburgh are another state. No judgment, good or bad. They're just very different.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Well,
I didn't know that. Okay.
Well, it isn't like the 2 sides of the states don't like each other or anything. They're just very different. And the eastern side is more agricultural and is centered around Philadelphia, and the western side is more rugged with mountains and was a bigger industrial area around Pittsburgh. And it's so it's different scenery, not as much farming, much more industry. And that's more what I'm used to. And I've actually lived in the Allegheny Mountains in the city of Johnstown. I'm going to go ahead and start the class. I don't think we'll have, if we might have some other people join us today, and that's fine if they come in a few minutes. I'm going to share my screen with you because I've got some stuff to talk about publishing a book today. Oops, I hit the wrong thing. You're now seeing all sorts. You should see something in a second called 6 questions every author should ask before they publish a book. And let me know if you don't see that. So everybody sees that?
Yes.
Good. Well, maybe before I start, since there's just 3 of you, tell me your interest, Lily or Diane, in this class. Do either of you have a book you're interested in publishing or writing, or?
Oh, I'm a frustrated writer. I taught high school math for 50 years, but I taught English once in a while too, and I enjoyed that ever much more. And I would love to write. I have 3 stories, real life stories that I think are fascinating, but I'm just not disciplined enough to sit down and put pencil to paper.
Okay. You sound like every writer I know, including
It's
myself.
so much fun being retired. I go to lunch, I play bridge. I mean, but to sit down and write is a lot of work.
Okay. And how about you, Lily?
Yeah, I hesitate to say this, but the truth is, since there's so few of us, I do. I have something that I sort of a burning desire for quite a while now. And Diane mentioned about retiring. I'm not retired quite yet, but I am transitioning out of what I used to do professionally. And so I feel like this is the time to do it. Sort of, I know it's a cliche, but if not now, when? So yes, I feel like I do have something, and I'm sort of feeling I'm gearing up to get to do it, maybe sometime in this calendar year.
Okay. Well, very good. Well, let me go ahead and since I've got that in mind, I'll share a few more things here. I am Russ Eanes, your guide. I shared with you already that I'm from Harrisonburg, Virginia. I am a writer, a walker, and a cyclist. I formerly was a book publisher, so that's my connection to book publishing. And in that role, I especially love to help authors shape their ideas into a book. So maybe that's something I can help each of you with today. I also wrote and published my first book in 2019 after publishing for hundreds of other authors. I never thought I would write a book. I never wanted to write a book. I love to write, but I never wanted to write a book. I didn't think I could sustain interest in one thing for that long, but I was wrong. I learned something over the age of 60 about myself, and now I love to write. So I write quite a bit. I'm working on my second book, which I hope to have out by sometime later this year. I won't name a date. I love the energy I get and the wisdom I collect from working with older adults. This is why I'm now a full-time guide with Get Set Up. Are either of you, this is your first Get Set Up class? So you both have taken other classes. I do a collection of classes on publishing and writing. I do a class called Everyone has a story to tell. That'll be Thursday morning, Thursday at noon Eastern time. That's about how to start writing a memoir, just how to start, because a lot of people just don't know how to start. So I give people ideas, an idea how to start. Tomorrow at 7 p.m., I do a class called the Publishing Mastermind, where anybody who has any interest in any form of self-publishing or getting a book published can come, and we discuss publishing ideas. I also do a class called How to Self-Publish a Book, and or I'm probably going to break that class up in the future into some different classes and talk about some of the different areas of it. So just keep an eye out. Those other classes will be coming up. If they're not this week, then next week. So since you work with Gets Up, you know that we help you learn useful things so that you can do wonderful things. We learn from each other. Ideally, we can see you and you have your cameras on. You can request a recording of this after class. You can email help@getsetup.io. If anyone is watching this on live stream, the best way to participate is to join us and register for a class. And you can be live right here and you can ask questions. And by the way, Get Set Up is not paid to promote any specific products. So should I show something today, I am not promoting it. Our objective today is really simple. It's one thing, is to help a budding or would-be author with some basic concepts that they should consider if they want to publish a book. And it's presented in the form of 6 questions. You'll get these 6 questions at the end of the class. You'll even get a little form you can fill out with these 6 questions that you can think about to give you some ideas to hopefully shape what it is you're writing. So, number 1 question is, what is it I am writing? Now, you have to identify a genre, and that there are more genres of literature than I could possibly explain or list right here. The main ones are ones we're most familiar with. For example, number 1 is fiction, something made up. It could be a novel. It could be a collection of short stories. It could even be a historical novel, which is, fiction based on real events. Another very common genre these days is what's known as a memoir. And a memoir is a little different than an autobiography. An autobiography is kind of like the story of someone's life. I like to call a memoir a story about something in someone's life. Memoir could be their whole life, but it could also just be about some aspect of their life or something important they want to share. Another genre that a lot of people are writing these days and might have interest in is the self-help guide. Maybe you have written a book about some specific kind of gardening and you are a master in that. And so you want to publish that. Maybe you're a poet, book of poetry. Maybe you're a photographer and you want to publish a book of photography. And there are some very specific things about books of photography. Maybe you are a cook or a chef and you've got recipes or want to produce a cookbook. Perhaps you've got a life story you want to publish. And many people, when they're over 60, would like to write a life story for their children or grandchildren. They don't even have an intention that anyone's going to buy it, but I encourage anyone to write that kind of life story. All of these things are just some examples of what's known as genre. Okay, why is that important? Well, the genre or type of the book determines a lot of things, okay? I always advise authors to go out and find some books that are kind of models of what you want to do, that are like what you want to publish, and you have to know what genre you're looking for. For example, if you want to write a travel book, you got to go study and read other people's travel guides or travel books. Here's one that you may not have thought of. I'm working with somebody on a kayaking guide to the Shenandoah River. Well, it's going to be done in color and it's got to be done on waterproof paper because they're probably going to drop that in the river sometime. You don't want to ruin the book. A cookbook these days should have nice color photos, and that means it's going to be printed on, most likely, on glossy paper so that the colors stand out. So, first question, what's a genre? And, you don't have to nail down what genre is. You have to have but an idea of a genre or 2 or 3. The book that I wrote even isn't nailed down into one specific type of genre. It crosses over somewhere between memoir and travel writing. So genre, what is my genre? What type of book? Question number 2, what is it that I want it to look like? Okay. Am I doing a print book? Am I doing an ebook? Am I doing both? How long is that book? We usually think of books in terms of how many pages they are, but when you're writing a book, you have to know how many words it is, because how many words it is can give you an idea how many pages it's going to be. What size do you want it to be? What there are various what they call trim sizes of books. Is it going to be hardcover? Is it going to be paperback? Is it or both? Is it going to have photos or illustrations in it? What are the exact dimensions that you're looking for? And to give you an example, weight and quality of paper, that is a factor in the cost and the quality of the book. Hi, Myra. Glad to have you join us. Now, I'm going to pause my share here for 1 second. I'm going to stop the share because I'm going to actually bring up a whole bunch of examples of books. And you'll pardon me for 1 second while I reach over here and grab them. All right, a whole bunch of different kinds of books that we're familiar with here. The first and foremost that we're all most familiar with is the simple paperback. This one is 5.5 by 8.5, which is one of the two most common sizes of paperbacks. And paperbacks are generally inexpensive or less expensive than hardcover books. The cover material and the type of paper inside have a lot to do with the price of the book. So the cheaper the paper, the less expensive the book is, the less it might cost. This is a guidebook about walking one of the routes of the Camino de Santiago, which I do a class on. That's what my memoir is about. And it is full of color photos and maps that are all in color. And so it's done on a glossy type of paper so that the colors stand out, but it's also a very thin glossy paper. It's got a nice stiff cover. It's all in color. And by the way, because it's a travel book or a guidebook to walking the Camino, these are people that are walking to carry this. It's small so that it fits in your pocket. Here's a little miniature hardcover book, Words to Ride By. You can see I got a bunch of books on bicycling. That's the next book I'm writing. Very interesting little book. It's a beautifully embossed hardcover with actually it's kind of a cloth cover on it. And inside it's got color paper. So it's like green. And then there's really nice illustrations. Very nice kind of pocket size, kind of cute, almost like a gift type of book. Cookbook. Friend of mine wrote this about the recipes she collected while in Spain on the Camino de Santiago. So it is a cookbook and it's hardcover, a beautiful hardcover. And it is also full of beautiful color photographs of food. So again, it's on glossy paper, not too heavy of a paper, but heavy enough that it's got a nice quality feel to it. And you may not have thought about this, but you actually tend to want color cookbooks to be a little bit heavier paper like this, not only for the color, but because you tend to have them out when you're cooking in the kitchen. They can get some moisture or your hands have something on them when you're turning the pages. You want the paper to be kind of resilient. Book I published, self-published, The Walk of a Lifetime. It's a paperback and it is printed on what's called print on demand. If you come to my How to Self-Publish a class, we'll talk about that. Little clue in the back that it's self-published. It's got a little barcode right down here inside because this book is printed one at a time. Traditional sort of old-fashioned printing is done, they print them in the thousands. That's how they get a fairly cheap unit cost. Here's another book that a friend of mine published. This is also a self-published book, and it's a self-published book about grief, the nature of grief. And it's a very nice color book. It's kind of an unusual, what they call a trim size. So it's longer at the base than it is high. It's a book that people can use to write in if they want. She's got nice color photographs. It's a softer paper. It's not as glossy, but the color photographs in here are very nice. This is done print on demand, one at a time, done through Amazon. So there's many options that anyone can choose when they're publishing a book. So those are just some examples. I know you all are familiar with books, but these are the things the person needs to be thinking about when they want to self-publish a book. What do I want it to look like? Any questions on anything I talked about so far? Yes, Lily.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what I'm trying to ask. The things you mentioned about, waterproof for kayaking or whatever sport
Right.
it was, and glossy pictures for a kitchen. Those are practical, very real, very tangible things. But what about something that's a little less tangible, like a memoir? Okay, so if a memoir, that and the quality of paper or the quality, can you comment? Is there, do you know what I'm saying? There's sort of not so directly practical considerations, but still considering the reader's experience.
Well, so an example is, how much do you want that book to cost? Do you want the book to be real expensive for people? So like I showed you this typical paperback right here. This is $16. That's kind of actually the average price of a paperback book nowadays. When I was much younger, the average price of a paperback was anywhere from $1.95 or $1.95 for the little kind of cheap paperbacks you could buy in the store, up to like $6 or $7 for one, or maybe $3 or $4 for one that was about this size. So if you're writing a memoir and you want, if you're selling it and you want people to buy it, you want it to be at a reasonable price. And so that can have a lot to do with the quality. That's actually a very important consideration. I don't teach that in this class per se, but in one of my more advanced self-publishing classes, there's an art to pricing a book. So anyway, you probably, and it depends a bit on how thick it is. Like I have a friend who writes historical fiction, and he wants his book printed on paper that's a little bit heavier. It's still inexpensive, but he wants a little bit heavier because he wants the book to be thicker, because he is of the opinion that the thicker the book is, the more it's worth.
There's probably some logic to that.
But there's just lots of psychological things. So you're actually, your question.
Well, that's what I'm talking about, the psychological aspect of it, because I don't want to offend anyone here. The size of a painting is highly related to the price.
Sure.
The size, not the skill, the size, literally, inches. So I guess I was just trying to, ask you sort of, I think you understand what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that, one thing I coach authors with, and I do have had a consulting business where I consult with authors that want to publish a book, is I have them really go out and find some types of books that they want theirs to look like. And sometimes it isn't even a book in the same genre. It's just like, I really like this book. I want my book to look like this. And then you begin to get an idea of these other qualities. What is it about that book that you like? What is it about that book that why you want your book to look that way?
That makes total sense. Yeah.
Well, let me come back to sharing some more things with you. And so we looked at some examples of books. Now, the third question, and this is where we're really getting into some very important stuff that an author needs to ask. And really, when you're writing, you need to think about this. Who is my audience? Your audience is the people who are going to read your books or book. And I say it is the most important thing to identify. It helps you decide how to write and how to market your book. Okay. So you got to be writing with that audience in mind. And then later, when you have written the book, you need to market it with that audience in mind. When you're deciding or creating or determining your audience, you need to be specific. You can't say everyone or the whole world, is my audience. That's who I'm writing for. That's not helpful. It's way too broad. You have to think in terms of demographics, gender, age, nationality. What are the interests of my readers? And by the way, my audience, you can have more than one audience. I consulted or helped a person. I edited a book for him last year and helped him with marketing. He's a good writer. He's writing a book about addiction. And I said, okay, now as I was editing it, I said, who is the audience of this book? Because I was reading it and I could have my opinions and thoughts about it, but maybe I wasn't in his audience. Well, he said, well, the whole world's my audience. I want everybody to read this book. I said, no, you got to be more specific. And so he spent some more time thinking about it. He came back to me and he said, my audience is number one, people who are addicted, and number two, family and friends of people who are addicted. I said, okay, very good. As I read and edit your book for you, I'll keep those audiences in mind, even though I'm not in that audience. And as I mentioned, you can have more than one audience. So your audience, by the way, might be your family. I've worked with people who've done nothing more than write a memoir for their children or their grandchildren. And I think that's a great thing to do, to write something for your family. And also, I had some clients whose books are not necessarily for sale. They use them as marketing tools for their business. One is he's a bookkeeper for small family-sized construction companies. That's his specialty. He does the books for them. And I worked with him to publish a book, like an eight chapter book on how to keep your books. What are some basics of accounting, all at the level of someone who really is into construction. They're not into finances, but they have to be able to produce their books at the end of the year for various reasons, if nothing else than for their taxes. And as he was developing clients, he actually, the book was priced $9.99. He gave the book away to people. Said, here's something you give you an idea of the kind of work I do. Here, I'll give you a copy of the book. And that person felt they were getting something of value. And they also showed the potential client that, hey, this person knows something because he's written a book, and also gives them an idea of what kind of stuff this person will be telling them, the bookkeeper will be telling them as he does their finances. So there can be many audiences and many reasons for publishing a book. So the book I wrote, my travel memoir called The Walk of a Lifetime, 500 miles on the Camino de Santiago. I don't know if any of you have heard about the Camino de Santiago. Anybody want to take a guess who I decided the audience was for my book? Hikers, good guess. Very good guess.
Bike riders, I don't know. Can you bike?
You can bike it. I didn't bike it, but could be bike riders, yeah. Well, I'll tell you. I came up with 3 distinct audiences for my book, and they're all related, so they kind of overlap with each other. The first audience is people who have already walked the Camino de Santiago. This is 500 miles walking across northern Spain, and they want to read about someone else's experience. Okay, that's one audience. Second audience, very closely related to that, is people who want to walk the Camino de Santiago someday. So it's in their mind. They've heard about it. They want to walk it, and they want to read about the experience of someone who's walked it because they want to get an idea. What is this going to be like? Now, I happen to know that before COVID-19 changed travel, we'll just kind of set 2020 aside, and 2021 might be a year we set aside as well. But before that, in 2019, nearly 400,000 people walk there every year, and 30,000 of them at least were people who were English speakers. In other words, that was their first language. That told me I've got a pretty large audience. That's people every year walking it. That means in 20 or 30 years, there could be over 500,000 people who've walked it. So it's a pretty big audience. Now, as I was writing my book, I also engaged something called beta readers, or people who are early readers of my book. And I discovered that there was another distinct audience, and that was I call it North Americans over 55 who want to accomplish some adventure in their life. So these are people that have raised their family. Maybe they've had their career. Maybe they're empty nesters, or maybe they never married, but they've accomplished a lot of things, and now there's some adventure that they still want to accomplish. And so, as I was working with readers of my book, I call them beta readers, early readers who read early versions of the chapters. Not all of them were people who had walked the Camino de Santiago. Some of them were just people who knew me and wanted to read a bit about my book. Well, they were older, and I discovered a lot of them loved it, and so I identified that target market. And by the way, these days, about probably half the people who buy my book are in this group. They don't necessarily haven't heard about the Camino de Santiago, but they've met me or they've heard about what I've done. And they also have this idea of adventure in their life. Okay, fourth question. If I identify my audience, the The question is, how will my audience find out that I have this? That's what's known as discoverability. It's no use having a book if people are not aware of it. And here's a little sobering statistic just to give, I always share this with potential authors. This is from 2018. I don't have the statistics from 2019 or 2020, but I'm sure they're very similar, if not larger. In 2018, nearly 1.7 million new books were self-published just in the US. So if you want to have people discover your book, you have a lot of competition. Discoverability requires promotion, engagement. That means finding readers who you can talk with or engage with. It includes advertising. It includes being in front of your audience. It involves publicity, and it involves marketing. A real simple example of discoverability that a lot of us are probably familiar with is what we see on Amazon. If you go to Amazon and you put in the title of a book or a topic, it will bring up some examples for you. You can click on one of them. And at the bottom of that page that you click on, you'll see something like this: books you may like. So Amazon knows you and your interests and what you have just searched for. And it says, hey, I've got some suggestions for you. So Amazon pulls up these suggestions right here, books you may like. And then down below it, you'll see something say products related to this item. And if you see this little word right here that says sponsored, that means that these are actually paid advertisements. So if you see my book there, that means that I have advertised for that topic that that person has searched for, or that specific book that they have searched for. And my book appears. It's an advertisement. So this is a very, probably one of the most common forms of discoverability that there is today, because so much of us do a lot of our shopping online. Maybe just back up one second. Were there any questions about that discoverability and identifying an audience?
Yes, I do. So as far as the Amazon or anything like that, how I am a big online shopper, but I know I can't use my behavior as normal. I rarely, if ever, look at this area of the website, but do a lot of people look at it?
Yes, a lot of people do. People look at it for two reasons. One, because something just simply catches their eye. They look at it. Now, for example, I was searching as I was looking for books about bicycling that I could use as background material for my next book that I'm writing, which is about a specific bike ride I made, a 7-day ride. I would use this over and over again. So I would look for books that were sponsored by it or books that were similar to it. And this is how I discovered a lot of books that I didn't know were out there. In fact, this book I was showing you earlier, Words to Ride By, is a book I discovered through Amazon like that. Though the curious thing was, back in the olden days when we went to bookstores, I haven't been inside a bookstore but once maybe in the last year. But I frequent bookstores, and I often take pictures of books that I like, because I'm not going to buy them that day, but I want to keep the title of that book in mind. And I was searching through some old photos of pictures I'd taken in Powell's bookstore in 2017, and there was this book of all places. Okay, so let's move on to the next question, and that is, what kind of a platform do I have to showcase my work or myself? Your platform is the position from which you speak. It's a combination of your credibility, of your experience, and the promotion that you do or are willing to do. So in the olden days, a lot of promotion, for example, was media interviews. Nowadays, it's more like a social media presence. Are you on Instagram? Are you on Facebook? Are you on Twitter? Author platform includes a personal website, which is something about you as an author, or your book, or your book. It can also involve a blog, or can involve a blog. I shouldn't say ought to, which is some of the samples of your writing. And it can also include samples of your written work, which can be your blog as an example of your written work, or it could be sample chapters of your book. These are actually all things that I do as an author. I have done media interviews. I have a pretty good sized social media presence. I have a personal website, which includes a website about my book. I have a blog, and on my website, you can get the first chapter of my book for free. So I figure if someone reads the first chapter and it was free and they like the book, they'll buy it. They didn't like it, they haven't lost anything. Nor have I.
Do you track how many people actually click on the tab to download to read the first chapter?
I do. I have statistics and I know how many people have read the first chapter. And I can also track people who go from my website to Amazon. You can also buy the book on my website. That's another thing that
Right.
authors ought to do, is sell your own book. And one thing I love about that, I have a feedback form. People buy my book, then they go to my website and they have a form they can fill it, and they email me and they tell me, hey, I loved your book. I really appreciated reading it. And that's very heartwarming for me. When we get to some of the outcomes we talk about, I'll mention that actually in just a minute here. A good example of a blog of someone who can tell you everything you need to know about publishing, whether you're self-publishing or going with a traditional publisher, is Jane Friedman. And that link to Jane Friedman's blog is there. So she's a great resource. The last question that an author ought to ask, and again, I ask authors this, is what is a successful outcome? What is it you want in publishing this book? Are you measuring how many copies you sell or give away? I have a friend named Cal Redicop. He is 95 years old. He's a retired college professor. He has been for decades a leader in environmentalism and a renewable energy. And he has a book which he self-published about his upbringing in the Dust Bowl in Montana, 1925 to 1937. And it's a wonderful book. He started writing it just for his grandchildren, and he did such a good job on it. He might sell a few copies, but his real pleasure is giving the book away to people. And by telling about that childhood, you get an idea how he turned out to be the person he eventually became as an adult. So for him, giving away copies is a measure of success. How many readers do you contact? So a measure of success for me is how many people have actually taken the time to find my website, find my contact form, and email me. That's something I really appreciate. And how many copies you want to sell. I decided that when I self-published my book that I wanted to sell 1,000 copies the first year. I actually hit it before a first year. And then I said, well, I hope I can sell a second 1,000 copies by the second year. I actually hit it, but halfway through my second year, I sold the second 1,000 copies. So, or do you want to earn a living as a writer? I tell people that's not easy to do. If you want to be a published author, you can do it, but it's hard. But you need to decide, is that the outcome? The same guy I mentioned that wrote a book on addictions, he really would like to earn a living as a writer. He's written about 8 books. And his first book was very successful. And he's been trying to copy the success of that first book ever since then. Well, that's one of his outcomes. He wants to earn a living. Your outcomes that you determine ahead of time drive your strategy, and the strategy drive the actions that you take. And you want to make your outcomes realistic and achievable. So for example, for me, to achieve my outcome, I know that I have to do a lot of promotion, and I know that I have to do advertising, and I can measure how successful the advertising is that I do. Here's another outcome in this picture here. I'm at an event called WMRA Books and Brews. That's our local NPR station, and they have an event once a month. Did have an event once a month at a local brewery. Whereas if you were a member of the radio station and you brought your member card, you could get a free beer and you could hear an author talk about their book. And I had the ambition. One of my outcomes was I want to appear at Books and Brews, and I did. I appeared twice, 2 nights, in 2 different places. One was in Harrisonburg, was in Crozet over near Charlottesville, and I spoke to about 250 people about my book, and I signed copies and just had a great time. That was an outcome I wanted to, as I wanted to share with people about my experience. So as an author, you got to think of those outcomes ahead of time. Just to mention a few of my related classes, how to self-publish a book, and we'll keep an eye on the schedule for that one. And the one that is actually Thursday at noon, Everyone Has a Story to Tell, which is about writing a memoir. I'm actually doing a class later this evening called Bicycling, Fun, and Fitness. Let me stop sharing here for a minute and come back so we can all see each other. We don't have cameras on, so I can't see you, but let me just entertain questions about anything that I've shared with you so far.
I have a question, Russ. If
Yes.
there's anyone else, I don't want to monopolize here.
Go right
Okay.
ahead.
So when you started, what am I trying to say? So you talked about, I don't know how you printed your book, but if there was a paper version, and perhaps some promotion costs. So did you start with a business? I mean, I don't know, a budget or something, something that you had to decide how much money. Well, you don't have to, but one might decide in advance. What are the costs? I guess what are the costs would be involved, the startup costs, and how do I evaluate that? I guess.
Excellent question, Lily. And if you come to my self-publishing class, we'll talk about that in detail. But I knew as a publisher that a typical average book costs between $3,000 and $4,000 for a publisher to publish. And that doesn't include additional marketing and promotion and distribution costs, which come after that. I knew as a self-published author, I could cut some corners because I was going to do all the promotion myself. I also did all the layout and design of my book, and it was just printed in paperback. I tell people it costs between $1,200 and $2,000 to self-publish a book if you want to self-publish a book for sale. That's very important. If you're intending to sell the book and maybe try to make some money, and by the way, if you sell 300 to 400 copies in that budget of $1,200 to $2,000, you usually can hit break even, so you can make some money back. Again, it depends on what your outcome is, what the outcomes are that you want. I did have the outcome that I wanted to earn some money from writing the book. But I mostly just wanted to get the book out there to people because I really loved the experience so much. So I had a general idea what it would cost, and over half my cost was just working with an editor. And a reason that a person might want to work with a traditional publisher is that traditional publisher will supply a good editor. I hired editors, and I also hired designers because I knew as a book publisher that those were two areas of professional expertise that I needed to bring in. When it came to marketing and promotion, I knew a lot of that myself, so I did all that myself and have been doing it. And I've had ongoing advertising expense. I spend about 20% of the total value of my sales on advertising and promotion on an ongoing basis.
Right.
And my book is priced $16.95, and the print cost is about $4 at Amazon. My book is also available through Ingram Spark, which is Ingram is the world's largest book wholesaler. So they also make my book available to libraries and to bookstores. I don't want Amazon to have a monopoly on my book. So,
right. Will you teach a course on, what was it you said, promotion and distribution? What was the term?
Well, I do a course called How to Self-Publish a Book, and I'm actually thinking soon of taking that course and dividing it up into 3 courses that I can offer about how to self-publish. One course will be, I'll tell you just how I did it, the steps to self-publishing, and then I do a course already on how to self-publish where I talk about things like hiring an editor and why you would choose to self-publish versus going with a traditional publisher, what the advantages and disadvantages are. And then if you come tomorrow night, 7 p.m. To the Publishing Mastermind, you can ask more questions. There's a group that meets there every week, and they all have ideas of what they want to publish, and you can share your ideas, and that group might give you some insight.
It's tomorrow night at 7?
7, yeah.
Okay.
Myra or Diane, do you have any questions?
She just asked 2 major questions that I was going to ask you in reference to cost and whom I should pick as far as a publisher is concerned.
Very good. I'm going to share with you a couple more things again here. Go back to my screen, and I share with you my next classes. And there is, by the way, a video of this class available. If you contact help@getsetup.io, they can give you a video of this class if you'd like to see it again. You will also get an email coming out after this class. I mentioned it before. There'll be some class notes. So all the material that we covered today will come to you. So if you feel like you missed anything, what was it Russ said? What was point number 3? It'll be in your notes. And there's also the same form, 6 questions that every author should ask. You actually get a copy of that form. I do appreciate feedback. Anything you feel I could do to make the class better, I really appreciate that. And if you have been involved in the Get Set Up community, and I think you said you have been, spread the word to other people about joining Get Set Up. It's free. You can also come host an interest group. If there's something that we don't provide, please suggest a class. We're working on helping developing classes based on suggestions that people have given us. I'm going to take one second here, and I'm just going to show you some things on the website in case you don't know them. And I think you all are familiar with the Get Set Up website. And if you go on there, you have your home where there's some suggestions of classes you might like. I'll show you a little thing you can find out here. So I'm doing a class tomorrow called Gmail, Useful Things You May Not Know. If you click on that class, you can find everything you want to know about that class, and you can go over here and you can register for it. You can click here to tell friends about the class, because if you were talking to somebody last night that said, I've got Gmail, I really don't know how to organize my inbox. You got any insight? You can say, hey, there's a class you can take. If you go up here to About the Guide, you can find out more about me. And then down here, there's a tab that says Other Classes I Teach. So if there's any classes that are scheduled, like here is Monday, there it is, how to self-publish a book, Monday at 1 p.m. So that was for, I think Lily was asking about that class. That's the next one. Monday at 1 p.m. is how to self-publish a book. Please register for that class. I think you'll really enjoy it. That's always great class interaction. I am doing a class, Pilgrimage in Italy, The Way of St. Francis, which is Thursday at 3 p.m. And then tomorrow night is the Publishing Mastermind group. And well, look at that. There's our class right there. 6 questions to think about to ask when thinking about publishing a book. And of course, the class I'm doing, Cycling, Fun, and Fitness. These are just the classes that are scheduled. I do more classes in this, and I'm actually going to start doing a whole series of travel classes about travel starting next week. So there's a lot you can find. There's different ways you can navigate our website. You can go right to classes right there, and it'll show you how to learn anything, and it'll, give some suggestions here. You can also go over here on the right-hand side. If you have some specific interests, you can click on the area that you're interested in. Maybe it's social hours or social media, or maybe you want to learn something about technology, about how to use photo apps, or how to use Zoom better, or what is YouTube. I mean, we teach just about everything. There's all sorts of great classes on cooking. Deb Livingston, my friend, she does awesome cooking classes. You can take classes on yoga. This is all into your home. And you can find new classes up here, something that's just getting ready to start. You can also find classes that are coming soon. So there's all sorts of things just to spend some time in the website. Then if you want to just see the schedule, will just shows you what's coming up next. And you can go through that up to a week. So you can find out what classes are on tomorrow. There we are at 12 a.m. This must be for the Aussies, Australian wildlife. We Get Set Up is worldwide, so we have a Get Set Up in Australia. And if you happen to be awake at 12 a.m. and can't sleep, go on Get Set Up and you can join this class. Otherwise, you can start the 8 a.m. class of Morning Fitness, or 10 a.m. Good Morning with Norman. So all sorts of things you can do with Get Set Up. Any questions? Yes.
Yeah. Well, you showed us all your classes. Is there a function to search by guide, or would that just happen?
When you clicked on, when I showed you on a class of mine, and
right?
It showed,
okay, that way.
You go there.
I teach. Yes. Okay.
And
all
then
right.
It says About the Guide, and then it has my classes down here.
Okay. Yeah, that one I thought maybe there was a way to do it.
It's coming. It's coming. We're going to improve this website even more. So there'll be a section you can find guide. And by the way, if sometime maybe you can't quite get into a class or haven't had time to register it, you might even find it live streaming out there on TV. So there are classes streaming right there. Any more questions?
I had one.
Yes, Myra.
I wanted to know, have you ever published any books and marketed them through Kindle?
My
ebook?
book, my book is published as a Kindle version. I mean, it has one of the versions. It's paperback and ebook, and I have there's about four or five types of ebooks you can do, and Kindle is one of them. That's the ebook version that sells the most, and I do that through Amazon. Yes.
Okay.
And it's free, by the way. You can publish free through Amazon.
Okay.
And Russ, you also mentioned, you said beta readers. I mean, were you using that to sort of, friends, family who were reading it first, or are there professional beta readers?
No, they were casual readers. Well, I found my beta readers two different ways. Some of them were just friends on Facebook. Some of them were friends and family that I knew. And I reached out to them by an email. I said, I've got the first 2 chapters of my book done. Would you like to read it and give me your feedback? And they said yes or no. And I always, by the way, I never send them a whole manuscript, just a bit at a time. The reason is if you send somebody a whole manuscript, they'll feel an obligation to read the whole thing. They'll be like, I haven't got time to read that whole thing. They won't even start. A chapter? Sure, I can read a chapter. And the third method I used was I searched groups. So there were online forums of people that wanted to walk the Camino de Santiago. And I'm part of those forums, and there's specifically a forum for people who are about books written about the Camino. And I went onto that forum and I said, I'm writing a book. Anybody here interested in reading some of it? And about 3 or 4 people contacted me. And then there's 10 Facebook groups of various aspects of walking the Camino de Santiago, and I posted on some of those groups. I'm writing a book. Anybody interested in reading? So, and then just friends of mine on Facebook. So I probably got 20 responses, of which maybe 15 read some of the book, and they were tremendously helpful. I mean, some people said, I really like this about what you did, or they said, I want more of this or that. And the others said, I just couldn't get into this aspect of it. And if enough people said that, I said, well, you're my target audience and you're not liking that part of the book, I'll take it out. Or you're my target audience and you want more of that, I'll give you more of that.
Okay, brilliant.
Well, wow. As I was writing, people said, I want to hear more about the experience. What did you eat? What did it smell like? How tired were you? What was the shower like? What was it like getting into a bunk bed in an albergue with 100 other, not in the bed with 100 other people, but in a big dorm room with 100 other people? They wanted to know that stuff. I said, I can give you that detail. I can tell you exactly what it smelled like, felt like, sounded like, looked like.
Right.
They said, we want that detail. So I gave them that detail. How did your feet feel at the end of the day? I'll tell you what my feet felt like.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. And is your tour of Italy a pilgrim? What I don't know, what part of Italy is that you're looking at?
The way of St. Francis goes between Rome and Florence, is generally from Rome to Florence, because Rome is sort of a pilgrimage destination. And my wife and I went in 2019, the year after I walked the Camino de Santiago, and she joined me for part of the Camino. We walked about 8 days. It's about a 3-week walk. So we walked a little over a third of it from the small city of Rieti to Assisi, and just loved it. We loved it so much that we were going to go back last year and walk more of it. Well, guess what? What was like the epicenter of the pandemic about the time that I was meant to fly to Italy? No way I was going to fly there in May. So I will go back next year.
Yeah. It's not going anywhere.
It's not going anywhere. It's been there thousands of years. It'll still be there next year.
Right. Yes. It'll be there. Wow. Okay. Well, thank you. And yes, I will be at your class. Is it tomorrow evening? I'll come.
Yes. Come to the Publishing Mastermind. It's a very delightful group that meets.
All right. How many times have you guys already met?
We've met about 4 times. There's no particular agenda. It's where I collect people that come to classes and they want some more. And I say, come and ask more questions and see if I can help you with something. And last week, we only had 3 other people besides me last week, and they all talked about what they were intending to do, and they gave each other ideas.
Oh, okay. Wow. Right. Yeah, no, these six questions were very helpful. I very much appreciate it. It's a lot of, I mean, there are six simple questions, but the answers are not, it's a lot to think about. The answers are not simple. The questions are very straightforward.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you were a delightful group. Thank you so much for being with me this evening. And I'm glad it sounds like you got something out of it. And send me feedback after you get the email, or send feedback in. I'll get the feedback eventually. And come take more classes. And Lily, no, it was Diane. Was it Lily or Diane? Was it Lily that said you'd come back tomorrow night?
I said that I would.
Yeah, Lily. I'm sorry. I was looking.
Yeah, I know. We literally do all.
Well, you all do look the same when it's just a block.
Right. We literally do.
Well, thanks again for coming. Everybody have a good evening.
Thank you. Thank you, Russ.
Yeah.
Thank
Good night.
you. I'll be
Thanks,
back.
Russ. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.